Fields in Owings Mills for all things Ravens. And, of course, our WNST tech service will keep you abreast of any movement there. But the real movement around here over the next 10, 12 days should be on the baseball side. The Orioles floundering, suffering, scuffling, and apparently involved in the trading deadline. We love having this guy on. He's chronicled baseball for as long as I can remember. One of our defending champs and current national MLB columnist for Bleacher Report as well as Turner Sports, and you hear him on Sirius XM MLB Network as well. We welcome Scott Miller back on in a busy summer, chasing teams around in the All-Star Game. And now, Scott, we get into the silly season where the media act as conduits to help make these deals, right?
Yeah, how you doing, Nestor? Yeah, no question. I tell you, in this internet digital age, the trade deadline is both a love and a hate thing for me because, it's kind of the point where people do play-by-play on trade rumors, which is like somebody trying to do play-by-play on you and me discussing which restaurant we want to have dinner tonight. You know, we might talk for 15 minutes, come up with 6 different options before we decide on one, and it's like as if somebody tweeted, Scott and Nestor are going to eat dinner at Lexington Market tonight. And then 2 minutes later, no, whoops, no, they're not. They're going to eat dinner in Inner Harbor. No, whoops, no, they're not. And it goes on and on and on. It's crazy.
Well, from the Orioles and from the leaks, and look, I do put a lot of trust in people like you and, Ken Rosenthal, people that are chasing news around. This is all I've done for a living. I mean, I grew up at the Sun with Buster Olney and Tim Kirchin and Ken Rosenthal. I mean, I have, impeccable sources. When I hear from them, that's a good source to me. And when you start to hear the Orioles bleeding out, and it's the same old story, Scott. I'm releasing the Peter Principles, my book on Peter Angelos, 25 years of covering this. When you start to see the bleeding out of, well, we have to run that by management, and there's got to be a medical, and, Mr. Angelos won't let us trade Manny Machado, it really does sort of gum things up, and it's always hard to evaluate what's going on here because we know Dan's not really running the show. Buck's not really running the show. At the end of the day, Peter's going to do whatever Peter wants to do, and it really muddles up what's happening here because these are 2 incredibly important weeks that are going to set the foundation for this franchise for the next 5 years. I mean, the first question has to be is, are they really going to give Manny Machado a couple of $100 million in 18 months? And do they really think they can win the World Series next year?
Yeah, that's all legitimate questions and legitimate observations. I mean, ever since Peter Angelos has owned the team, which is a long, long time now, this same kind of stuff keeps coming up. And there have been many cases of people in the industry with other teams, getting frustrated, saying, well, we're talking to the Orioles about such and such a deal, but I can't close it out because whoever the general manager is, whether it's, Dan Duquette, going back to the old days, Jim Beattie or Jim Duquette or Sid Thrift, fill in the blank, they've got to go get final permission from Mr. Angelos. And so that leaves other teams thinking, well, maybe they have a deal, but then they get word back a day later. No, there is no deal. And, there's no secret that, other clubs find it frustrating to deal with the Orioles because, whenever you're talking about a deal, generally speaking, the guy you're negotiating with, it works a lot. It's a lot cleaner if he has the power as you're cutting a deal to give you a yes or a no rather than I think so, but I need to go back into my people, meaning the owner, and check it out.
It's like buying a used car where you have to say, well, let me go back and check with my manager on that and, give me a couple of minutes on that. And look, we've been 25 years. I go back to this and, we can laugh about all the stuff that happened, but, I've just written a book about all of these hijinks that go on with the organization. And, things have really been deodorized around here, Scott. The last 5 years, Buck, Adam Jones, Machado, Scope coming into his own, Davis bashing the ball, them making good signings with Cruz and Trumbo and getting extra value. But the minor league system might be the worst in all of baseball. Someone has to wear that. The pitching staff might be the worst in the history of Major League Baseball, and someone has to wear that. And they've got this kid in Machado hitting 220 right now. And, sort of floundering around on a team that can't get anywhere. And they don't have all the bullets in the gun because Angelos won't do business with the Nationals. He won't do business with the Yankees. He won't do business with the Red Sox. It's stupid. It doesn't make any baseball sense, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of things get said and twisted around and whatever, but the bottom line is, it's kind of like with the San Diego Padres last year, where their general manager, A.J. Preller, was hit with a unprecedented month-long suspension for not being completely truthful and not allowing full disclosure on disabled list stuff that the Padres had. So it became a question of, over the winter and into this year, are other clubs going to even deal with the Padres anymore? Because A.J. Preller has been suspended for 30 days. Can other clubs even trust the Padres? I bring this up because it's parallel to what you're saying with Angelos and the Orioles. Bottom line is, some other clubs did end up doing deals with the Padres, despite the trust chasm, because when push comes to shove, there are only 29 other teams in the game. Whatever team you're on, whatever team you work for, if you're working the trade deadline or the off-season trade stuff, you've only got 29 other clubs to deal with, so you've got to keep the lines open with every one of them because, say if my need is a second baseman, there are only 29 other teams that I have a chance to go get a second baseman from. Now, of those 29 other teams, there might only be 3 or 4 teams that have an excess of second basemen. So the pool gets narrowed really, really quickly. That's why you've got to have an open mind and deal with everybody.
You expecting this to be active the next 2 weeks? I mean, certainly there's a lot of conditions here for a storm, right? I mean, the Yankees have money and a want. The Red Sox have money and a want. Cleveland's in this thing. The Nationals dealt for some relievers. The Cubs certainly feel like they're in this. And then there's like teams like the Brewers and the Twins and even the Astros and the Colorado Rockies in Arizona that are getting a real taste of this and want to try to reach that brass ring that, this is where you can fleece some teams if you have a couple of bullpen pieces or a guy like Machado, I would think.
Yeah, no question. Yes, I do think it's going to be active over the next 2 weeks. It always is. Teams, end up, even the teams that are scared to make a big move because they want to hold on to their young players, those teams end up making minimal, a small move. So not everybody, in other words, is going to make a blockbuster move. But that said, it's teams are going to be, no question, moving. I mean, the Chicago Cubs, we've already seen, they acquired Jose Quintana from the Chicago White Sox. And Quintana, first start with the Cubs, just what the doctor ordered. 7 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts. So the Cubs are already on the move. The Washington Nationals, desperate for bullpen help, pull the deal with Oakland and get Sean Doolittle and Ryan Madsen to help their bullpen. So, the train's already leaving the station here at the trade deadline, and as you mentioned, there are a number of other clubs that are looking for some fixes. So some are going to be big, some are going to be small.
We got the Texas Rangers in here this week, Scott. By the way, we're on the line with Scott Miller from Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey at Scott Miller, BBL. He's got cheeseburgers and all sorts of good things up there, as well as some rock and roll from time to time, so he's a fun follow in addition to baseball. We got the Rangers coming in and the Astros coming in here, and you start to see these teams and what their weaknesses are. And, these are also teams that you're competing with on the trading side. I mean, I found it fascinating that the Nationals needed relievers so bad, and the Orioles wouldn't pick up the phone. Billy Beane's happy to take on some prospects out there, and I think part of that is you have to be willing to take on the good or the bad on the trade, and then the question is who is making that deal. And here in Baltimore, it's Dan Duquette, who hasn't been particularly good at it. I'm seeing like a John Daniels come in on the backside of a Cole Hamels deal 2 years ago we're still talking about. There's a lot to be said for the confidence of who your scouts are, as well as the development you have in your system to get these guys to the big leagues at some point, because when the Adam Joneses and the Chris Tillmans blossom, Andy McPhail wasn't even here to drink from that, although he made the deals.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you said Andy wasn't what?
Andy wasn't here to even drink from it in the end. He made those great deals, and he wasn't in the winner's circle when they're playing in the American League Championship Series.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I think that's easy to forget. I think some people have forgotten that really the Orioles' turnaround began when Andy McPhail was in charge, and he was the one that I believe they drafted Matt Wieters under his charge as well. And, he really started to get the ball rolling in the right direction. And then, of course, Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter come in and take it from there. So, Andy did some great things. I know, Dan's had his moments, but again, it's a tough situation when you have the owner breathing down your neck. And, you mentioned John Daniels. He's got some autonomy to go out and make some moves. And I always appreciate the general managers who are not scared at the trade deadline, the guys that go out and know exactly what they need, and they go out and get it. And they don't worry about, oh, no, am I going to lose this trade? I mean, it's no secret. The best trades are the ones that help both teams. If you're out in a trade and you're afraid to lose a trade, you're going to be a general manager with a short shelf life. You need to have the confidence, like Dave Dombrowski's another great one, where you identify, okay, I know I need this. I'm going to pay what it takes to get it. And if I give up a young player that turns into a star somewhere else, fine. That's what happens sometimes. If I plug my hole and this helps me win, it's still a good deal. John Daniels is a master of that. And, he's got autonomy, I think, is a key word, because, the Rangers had, for a bit, they had Nolan Ryan as president above John Daniels. And then Nolan Ryan started to get more involved in baseball operations than John Daniels preferred, and they clashed. And the Rangers ownership eventually said, look, John Daniels is our guy. And Nolan Ryan now has gone over, he's left the organization, he's with the Houston Astros. So the Rangers put full autonomy in John Daniels' hands to make baseball decisions and baseball moves, and that's why you've seen that organization, play in 2 World Series not long ago.
I think the last time you and I talked, the Red Sox were scuffling and having all kinds of problems. The Yankees were a mess. It turns around kind of quickly when you have a lot of money and you make some deft trades at the trading deadline. I mean, the Red Sox just throwing the panda over the side of the boat, $50 million, no problem. But it does not bode well for the Orioles or for Toronto or in the end for Tampa. And I know they're on a run right now that the Yankees and the Red Sox have started to date again on Saturday nights for 15 innings and play meaningful baseball games, and certainly littering the field with tons of young talent.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly got to be worrisome for Tampa Bay and Toronto and Baltimore. That said, the Yankees, it was a blow this week when Michael Pineda was declared, he did Tommy John surgery, so Pineda's done for a year and a half. Yankees have some really good young players. I think they're going to fall short this year. Earlier, you go back to May, a lot of people are starting to get excited, like, hey, Yankees may be back playing this October, and I think that's a stretch. But they do have, Greg Bird's out as well. He's not come back from that ankle injury, and now he's, had surgery, and he's going to be done for a while. But still, Aaron Judge, obviously, terrific young player. Gary Sanchez. They do have some good young prospects that it looks like the Yankees and Red Sox, they're not going away anytime soon. They're going to be there.
Kansas City Royals are an interesting team because they had that gigantic parade that I know you're aware of, which we haven't had here, which they haven't had in a lot of Texas, a lot of places, Cleveland, where they're still sort of reaching for the brass ring, Detroit as well. But Kansas City actually won, and this was sort of the year that if things went south, they could deal off a bunch of these guys and get younger and get better, knowing that they're not going to give Hosmer and Kane all of this money. Moustakas, the same thing. And yet they've played themselves into a weird position where I don't think they can sell off, right? I mean, there are teams out there in the middle of this that aren't in a position. Minnesota might have been one of those teams, Milwaukee, that they can't have a sell right now. They have to stay in this thing and put their nose down because they're in it. They have a real chance.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Minnesota came into the year hoping Irvin Santana pitched well so that maybe in July they could trade him and gain more young prospects. Well, not only are they not going to trade Irvin Santana, but you're seeing the Twins try to find some starting pitcher that they can afford because you're right, they're in it. And Kansas City, no question, they got off to a bad start in April and May, but Dayton Moore, their general manager, made the decision last winter, even though they've got a whole bunch of players who are going to be free agents when the season is done. Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Lorenzo Cain, Alcides Escobar, all those guys are going to be free agents. So a lot of, but Dayton Moore said, this is a very, very special team. We're going to try to keep it together and give it one more chance to win, and that's what they're doing. Now, had they still been playing as poorly as they were back in April, then maybe Dayton would trade some of those players this month. But they played themselves back into it. They're in the mix in the American League Central. So, now it would be ludicrous if he trades some of those players because if he was going to trade them now, why not trade them back in the winter time? If you're going to trade them when they're going to be in contention, which they are now.
A little worried about Houston and L.A. I mean, they're just showing off right now, right? I mean, and nothing matters until it's sort of like the Cubs last year. Nothing really matters till Game 1 in October, right? You lose that at home, and all of this we're going to play 700 balls sort of goes away, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's no question that the Astros and the Dodgers right now, as we speak today, you have to say are the odds-on favorites to meet in the World Series. Now, we'll see what happens. The injuries obviously have a way of changing things. You wonder where the Dodgers are concerned. They've just smashed opponents over the last 6 weeks. They've had a heck of a run. Are they going to be able to sustain that? Are they going to have an injury or two that slows them down, or are they peaking now and they're going to be slumping later? You never know. But no question right now the Dodgers and Astros are, I think, in my mind, the teams to beat.
Last thing for you, because I know you were chasing the Colorado Rockies around and doing a piece on Charlie Blackmon as well, and you were at the All-Star game last week. And Luke and I spent a long time last week, every guest I had, baseball-wise, during the All-Star game, talking about this young infusion of talent. And in places like Colorado, the Arenados and the Blackmons, and in places like Arizona, the Goldschmidts, dude, we're in Baltimore. We don't even see those guys, right? But you can look up and you can see the numbers. You can see what's going on, that balance of power has changed out in the National League West. And around baseball, there's just so many young players for guys like you to get out there and write about, right?
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, Charlie Blackmon, leadoff hitter in Colorado, he hits on the road, not just at home. So I know everybody thinks, the Colorado Coors Field advantage. You always look at the Colorado splits. Well, Blackmon hits everywhere. Fun guy, quirky guy. Players love to razz him. He still drives a 2004 Jeep that he drove back in high school.
And he's not a young guy, by the way, right? I mean, he's a long time into this and is finally, because the team has had no notoriety to speak of, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so it's nice to see them win and him get a chance. Guys like Charlie Blackmon get a chance to shine. And you're right, in that National League West, the Rockies and the Diamondbacks both this year have a chance to win wild card slots and really reverse their fortunes, and that's been fun to watch.
Hey, man, it's always fun to watch you out on Twitter. We're going to be following you, Scott Miller, BBL. I know we don't get together often, but I love having you on the program talking some baseball, and hope we're going to get an active couple of weeks around here, and I certainly, from a Baltimore perspective, just hope we can find a way to make the team better. This is tough to watch every night. I don't ever need to see Ubaldo Jimenez toe the rubber again, Scott.
No, their rotation is the worst in baseball, and statistically it's just ugly, and certainly for you guys to watch there in Baltimore, it's ugly. So, yeah, they need to get that fixed here pronto.
Yeah, I'm answering the civic question. When does football season start? Scott, great having you on, man. Keep out there in the sun. We'll keep following you.
All right, thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Scott Miller, longtime Major League Baseball columnist, now with Bleacher Report, as well as Turner, as well as Sirius XM. He's everywhere. Fox Sports San Diego, one of the good dudes out there, living large in the land of fish tacos. And hey, they don't have any more football in San Diego. I did the research on that. You can follow him, Scott Miller, BBL. Great follow if you love baseball. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. We got the Peter Principles in the Audio Vault as a red item. You'll be able to hear that next week here at AM 1570 and WNST.net. Or you can read it, take it with you wherever you go, wherever the internet goes, wherever your mobile device goes. It is the Peter Principles out at WNST.net. We're also going to be putting those links up on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and I'm always doing radio and video live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel, and you can subscribe there. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox each and every morning. That is all brought to you by Planet Fitness. It is $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, and there is a Planet Fitness right around the corner from you. Any breaking news on this Oriole trading deadline or on the Ravens next week once they get to the field? Hopefully no text on the Ravens, because that's always bad news in July and August. It'll all be brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here Thursday. He is excited about football. I'm sure he wants to get you excited about football as well. The SSV on WNST 3 until 5 on Thursday. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking. Baltimore sports.